Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Down in the Valley. My name is Edson Ochoa, and really delighted to be back on a regular day. Would like to remind you, and would like to show our appreciation to our beautiful Game Network sponsors, Roughneck Scarves and Golden Gold Press. Who also we would like to give a huge shout out to everybody who's out there right now watching us, who watches our shows in our archives on YouTube. Really appreciate it. Be sure to like it, share it, and of course subscribe to the channel if you are a newcomer to this channel. So welcome to all of those newcomers. We hope you stay here and join us in discussing everything that deals with Rio Grande Valley FC Toros. But before we continue on, let's go ahead and give a huge welcome to our good friend and co-host of the show, Jacob Young. Jacob, how you doing, man?
Doing all right, not doing too bad. Looking forward to this show. We had a big game yesterday. That was kind of RGVFC versus Austin Bold. And then, of course, we had the game on Saturday night. And then, of course, now coming back home finally to HEB Park this Saturday. So, lot to talk about and looking forward to it.
I can definitely agree. What I don't agree is the fact that you said it was RGVFC versus Austin Bold. Uh, because
It was and it wasn't, is
and
really what
we'll
I'm
and,
saying.
and we'll talk about that because I think a lot of people were surprised going into this match, and like uh, like Jacob mentioned, we'll be talking about the match that happened on Saturday between RGVFC and Real Monarchs. A match that I guess you can say kind of boiled our blood, but it boiled our blood at the moment. But looking back to it, at least me personally, I kind of understand why things happened the way they did. I'm not sure, Jacob, if that is something that you're feeling or if you're still kind of mad about it. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're going to talk about Michael Salazar's signing from RGVFC to the Houston Dynamo. Michael Salazar back in MLS, just like he wanted it, but I don't think he expected it to be that quickly. Also, we'll talk about a little bit about last night's Open Cup match between the Houston Dynamo and RGVFC. We have some quotes from Michael Salazar himself from last night that I would be interesting for you all to take a listen about that. And also, we'll talk about this Saturday's match against the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. So we have a lot to talk about. But guys, remember that be sure to check in the chat if you guys have anything you guys want to talk about. You guys have any opinions about what the topic in hand? Feel free to talk right in the chat. We'll try as best as we can, to have a discussion with you all as well, because this is also your show. You guys have any questions, concerns, any hot takes? Be sure to bring them on the show, and we'll discuss them with you. Because, like I said, we really appreciate all of y'all's feedback. So let's get started with the first topic. Last Saturday's match again between RGVFC and Real Monarchs. We discussed this for, I think, almost like a third of the show, if not almost to half of the show. We were talking about that match. We were talking about what kind of lineup would we see that Saturday, dealing with having Malik Foster out, having uh, who else? A couple of other absences as well, which we thought there would be more because of Open Cup coming in. And so we discussed all of that, and our biggest thing was who was going to replace Malik Foster. You said you said Nico Lemoyne. I said Camilo Monroy, and it turns out Jacob was right all along. How does that
Yeah,
feel?
it feels great. It feels great to get something correct, of course. Yeah, it's something that well, I kind of expected just to say the fact that had someone in our chat last week also say that, well, give him some more playing time. This is almost kind of a throwaway match with the way that things are going,
Hmm.
which just happened. And of course, we get a player that's young. We need not only this young talent, this team is to basically build for Houston Dynamo to just develop players. And it's one way to know that, especially, well, Malik Foster, he's officially gone, or, well, I guess not official, but we all know he is leaving at the end of Gold Cup play or whatever. And so just something that we kind of thought about and we kind of knew who's going to replace this man. And yes, give some players some more playing time. And of course, yes, he didn't necessarily look as great as he could have, but, well, I mean, what are you going to expect from a man that has barely played any time? You give him some time for a road game, get him used to the feel, and maybe have him at another home match. And of course, yes, he did get subbed out, so it's not like it was a total loss from that player.
Now, I really don't think that Nico Lemoyne did that bad.
No.
Considering what how the game was in hand, we knew it was going to be difficult. Um Trying to get some possession out there because of the elevation, because of these absences, whatever you call it. I don't think Nico Lemoyne was the problem.
No.
It was very obvious that the biggest surprise to everybody was Coach Echeverry starting Sergio Mena in place of Robert Coronado. It was a huge curveball by Coach Echeverry to anybody, uh, because we thought like we thought that there would be a change anywhere else but that position because of how well Robert Coronado's playing.
Yeah.
And no Sam Junqua, so we figured, okay, well, Robert Coronado is going to be a shoe in for that position. Come the announcement of the starting 11, we see Sergio Mena on the lineup. A player that, if I'm not mistaken, had not received any minutes, if not very few minutes, in the USL Championship, what we've had so far of the season. And I thought, okay, um, I'm surprised about that. The first thing I thought was, okay, he's Robert Coronado is probably going to be going over to the Dynamo for Tuesday. The Dynamo probably, suggested, resting Robert Coronado because of the short turnaround time to the Open Cup match that happened yesterday. So I thought, okay, all right, well, I have faith that Sergio Mena is going to do a decent job with in the game. We also saw Kyle Adams in the bench as well and you had Robert Castellanos playing. Robert Castellanos, a player we've seen play before, and we know that he's a player that mm, he does the job. It's not like something that's kind of like is kind of extraordinary, where like, oh, he stands out, but he's one of those players that does the dirty job whenever you need him, whenever somebody gets injured or suspended, and the Dynamo didn't send anybody. He does the job. So I was mostly concerned about how good Sergio Mena was going to play. And oh boy, was it disappointing to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're correct on that. Just the play in general from everyone was disappointing. But then again, it goes back to we didn't expect them to play as bad as they did. Really, we did expect it to not be great just due to the fact that, well, we've had kind of a solid lineup all season long. We haven't necessarily had to change it as we had seen that chemistry kind of pick up.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, Kyle Adams having to go onto the bench because of Tuesday, and other starters like that because of Tuesday had to go onto the bench, which was expected, which was fine. The only difference was that Michael Salazar ended up starting on goal. And of course, we heard that news later on during the week that he had been signed fully to a Houston Dynamo contract. So it was just something, of course, out of the ordinary. We had a different defense as well as kind of a different midfield for at least the wing positions, the wider positions of that game. So it we knew it was going to be a challenge, and it was going to be a different game, but we didn't expect to see the result that we did. And yeah, it just goes back to you need those players, A, to be playing a lot on the pitch in general, and B, playing together. It just goes back to you don't know what this player is going to do, and you don't know what that player is going to do, just due to the fact that you haven't played together on the pitch at the same time, most likely.
So you understand where Coach Echeverri was coming from, trying to give him the opportunity to start over Robert Coronado.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you got to have a deeper team. You got to know that, okay, if this player is going to be coming on in the 58th minute with this guy, let's say, then, of course, just to give it a bit more of a boost, of course, he's going to have to know how to play with this person on that place. And, yes, this is kind of a throwaway game just due to that fact that, well, it's on the road. We've never necessarily done well. It's at an odd time. We don't have Malik Foster anymore. It's just, yeah, you give those players opportunities on these types of games. So we don't want to see it happen to where later on we have to do this and all of a sudden it's a big shock and it's in the playoff run. Luckily, it's still kind of early in the season. We are pushing towards a bit later, but it's still a good time for us to get those players ready to say, hey, you're going to be starting. Now is your time to not only shine, but to make sure that you can, well, help lead this team to a playoff position.
And see, here's something that my dad is bringing up in the chat. He says Coronado has a high percentage of the offensive. So he's more offensive on the team on the left side. Mena looked more defensive. Personally, I think moving defensive, the defensive block was key for those goals. And the commentators said that, they mentioned during the game that pretty much it looked like RGV was parking the bus. They had 2 blocks of 4 lines, and they were very, very, very far back. So that gave Real Monarchs the space necessary, to do what they needed to do, build up that attack. And if you notice it, I believe it's the first goal because it's the long ball from midfield that the striker chips over Michael Nelson. That one you kind of see how the passer has enough space to think about what he's going to do, find his teammate, send the ball over to the teammate that with a ball that goes behind Castellanos' back, and gives a huge advantage to his teammate over Michael Nelson to slot it in for the goal. And you see that lack of offensive push. And I feel it's number one is because the blocks were too far back, but number two was that whenever Chuy or Nico tried to create some opportunities on the attack, Real Monarchs right away pressured them, made them lose the ball, especially in the middle with um, Isidro Martinez trying to distribute that ball in the midfield. They did not allow him to be comfortable. They lost the ball real quickly. And it was just a barrage in the first 30-some minutes, a barrage of that attack by Real Monarchs. And frankly, the defense was extremely lost out there, especially Mena. I felt like he was overwhelmed by the Real Monarchs. Real Monarchs identified this, started to focus their attack on that side compared to Andrew Samuels' side. And that was the key for them to find those 3 goals really quickly. I don't know if anybody else agrees in the chat. So, guys, let me know what y'all think. But, Jacob, what were your thoughts? Do you agree with this, or did you feel like there was something else that caused this mess up?
I mean, that's just one of multiple mess ups, really. Yes, he felt he was kind of overwhelmed. It's his kind of first start in a way, and a different position, as you kind of pointed out. And so when it happens like that, yes, you're put on the spot. It's tough. So yeah, I do agree that was kind of one part of that mess up. Of course, there were multiple things that went wrong, but that's one part.
Yeah.
And it goes back to he didn't have the chemistry. He didn't necessarily have that potential. And let's be real, the Real Monarchs were never a terrible team. They're shown right now in like 15th position, but I don't think that that's where they kind of deserve to be, just due to the fact of how they were able to really fight that back line and find that open possession. And you also mentioned it too. We were kind of parking the bus, so they were able to find their way around our defense in general, and that's really tough to do just against the USL team too.
Yeah. And here's another thing. I feel like because Phoenix Rising had the same problem, right, in the beginning of the season. They were down there in that, and then look at them now. Like, you look at what the kind of streak that they have. I think the Western Conference is so competitive right now for the majority of the teams that if you look at the standings, just as the standings for a benchmark of how good or how bad a team is doing, besides Tacoma Defiance, that's pretty much a given, and they're kind of like a dumpster fire. But other than that, you see these 15, 16 place teams, and they don't play like 15, 16 place teams. It's just that right now this conference is so competitive that anybody can beat anybody. Mm-hmm. And just take a look at the standings. Right now, I think we're like in 13th or 14th place, the Toros. Yeah. But yet, we're only 3 points away from 8th place, which is a playoff berth, which is Austin Bold. So, the play sucked in Real Monarchs, but really right now we're in a pretty decent position to not say that, we have to sound the alarm because of this match. It's just one of those things. It's just one of those matches where Coach Echeverri was kind of free to experiment, and now he realized that this player, frankly, this league is too much for him. And remember, now we have transfer window coming up, so there's time for him to make some adjustments to the roster in that regard, as well, whether in or out. However, another thing that I do want to point out, going back to analyzing this match, and I think out of all of the goals, the second one was the one that boiled my blood the most, because you're at a corner. You had Real Monarchs take a corner, right? Number one, it seems to be an issue with the whole Dynamo system, whether it's the first team or the Toros, where it just seems like they're kind of iffy on set pieces, defending set pieces.
There it is.
And in this goal, number one, you let who was it? Was it Ricardo Silva? I don't know. It was actually um, Douglas Martinez who had scored the first goal. You let him to get a touch on that ball, but here's the kicker. Who was it again? Here's the kicker though. Josh Hurd, who was the goal scorer for that play. Take a look at that replay. You have two defenders and Michael Nelson right there with him. Now Michael Nelson has to be there, right? Because the header was coming in from that side of the box, so it was going to be easier for Michael Nelson to be positioned there. In fact, the ball was heading towards the first post, so he was positioned correctly. But you have Sergio Mena and Wilmer Cabrera Jr. right there marking, and I'm going to put it in air quotes, marking Josh Hurd. One player in between 2-3 Toros players, and yet he's the one that is able to get a touch on the ball without any pressure. It's ridiculous. It just shows how lost the player was. And I hate to bring it up because it seems like every show I talk about him, but it seems like Wilmer Cabrera Jr., like, come on. Like, I felt like he could have done a lot more, but the biggest thing that should have happened, I think Wilmer was there kind of like in a zone. That was his zone, just to be there. But the biggest priority for Mena should have been to mark that defender. Now, Mena is between Hurd and the ball. No, not Hurd and the ball. Mena's between the goal and the ball and obviously Josh Hurd. But it seems like when that ball is headed, Hurd kind of moves a step towards his right, and Mena doesn't react. Like, he sees Josh Hurd. That little step that Josh Hurd took was enough for him to get that advantage, to be able to get a touch on that ball and put it in the goal. And it seemed like Mena had no idea what to do after he saw that. Because with that touch, Mena was pretty much like next to the goalpost, while Hurd was like two steps to his right, kind of like made it easy to just flick it past Michael Nelson. And I think that was the biggest key. That was at that moment, if I was the coach, thankfully I'm not the coach, because I'd probably be like a Tuca kind of mad coach. But I think at that moment, with the lack of hunger in that player, or the fact that him being so lost, I think I would have subbed him out right there. Even if it meant kind of humiliating him, and it sucks, But for the sake of the team, you know, at least 2-0 was something bearable. But Coach Echeverri had a little bit of confidence that he'd be able to react. Okay, 1-0. Okay, 2-0. You know, kind of wake up, right? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt to wake up. Then comes the 3-0. From where the play begins from his side of the field. He had enough. Coach Echeverri had enough of that. He's like, you're not going to respond to me? I don't need you in this. I don't need you in my lineup. And I'm gonna try to salvage whatever I can. And he brought in Robert Coronado at the 38th minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying. Should have brought him in kind of sooner. I know that Jerson, fantastic coach, phenomenal, but at the same exact time, it's been all season long on the road. This team doesn't respond until they're at least 2 goals down, no matter who they are. And, of course, in this case, it was 3 goals down. So that's even worse. And, of course, yeah, it's frustrating. Coronado should have started.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was feeling, whatever, but we've seen him start, and he's been fantastic. Why Coronado wasn't starting, it probably just give him rest so that they can come back at home for, of course, a great thing. But he should have been subbed out earlier than that. It's frustrating. We've seen it all season long. Why this team doesn't respond until they're 2 goals down at least just blows my mind.
Yeah. So, kind of reading up on the chat right now. My dad says this is the most difficult thing about this match is knowing that without Coronado and without Adams, we're going to suffer defensively and offensively. And then Sean agrees with him, and then Callow says, "Listen, we're gonna need for you to give us Michael Nelson. You can keep Tyler Derrick." And then Sean's like, "I agree with Callow. We'll also send Chris Duval back with Derrick for you." Ah, jeez.
Chris Duval, your favorite player.
And then Callow's like, "I mean, we've already given them the best defender in the history of RGV, Sam Junqua." And then my dad also says, if only Wilmer Cabrera Jr. had half the courage or heart that his dad had, he would be a hell of a player. He's young. I think he's still very, very young. And It's one of those things where you're an 18-year-old playing against a bunch of adults. It is very nerve-wracking. For you have the pressure of having the reputation of your father, who was an excellent player for Colombia. You have that pressure on you whether you want it or not.
Yep.
And I understand all of that. I understand he's young. He's still got a lot to learn. He still has some development to go through. But at least show some hustle in those kind of instances. Besides that play, I mean, you didn't really hear much out of the match about Wilmer Cabrera Jr. You didn't hear of him. One of the key points we talked about last week was how key Wilmer Cabrera Jr. would be as a distributor, and you saw none of that. You saw none of that in this match, even when Coronado was in. Fun fact: if his dad coached RGB, he would have subbed his son for McNamara. Oh, jeez. Oh, Jesus, guys. But going back to the whole thing, to this whole argument, it really is one of those things where, as the days went by, I started pondering about this match, whether my reaction was a little bit too hot-headed in the day in social media, whatever you want to call it. And as I was writing my article for this match, one of the things that popped into my mind, and I just had to write it, is it really Coach Echeverry's fault for putting in Sergio Mena? Or is it Sergio Mena's fault for not proving to Coach Echeverry, or at least responding to Coach Echeverry's confidence in the player to step up to the plate in this kind of circumstances and play what he knows how to play as? Is it? I think it's more of the latter. I think it's one of those things where Coach Echeverry, I mean, he sees them every day in practice, so he knows what kind of qualities he has. But if said player doesn't respond on the field, then there's nothing Coach Echeverry can do but just sub him out, and that's exactly what he did.
Mm-hmm. I mean, given the fact that it was after a while, but yeah, I mean, of course, yes, you let them wake up, you let them have a chance, but of course, it's tough. And given the fact it was tough for him to begin, he kind of knew ahead of time just a little bit that, of course, Wilmer Cabrera, to be exact, the head coach of Houston Dynamo, was going to need to use a couple of players for the Open Cup. Not to mention that whenever they play the dumb Mexican team of Club America, I know just offended a ton of people. Oh, well. But you get my point. We know that we're going to have to rest and going to have to be away with a couple of players. So here's the chance. And going back to also kind of your question, that was it more of Jerson's fault or, of course, the player's fault? Well, it was the player's fault for not necessarily taking advantage of his opportunity. It goes, you have to take advantage of an opportunity in general. And sure enough, he didn't do that, which is, of course, you're going to get subbed out. It's like the rating of FIFA, when you're playing your player career mode and you're just not playing well, like the 5.6, hey, you're going to get subbed out. And sure enough, when they score a goal, you're most likely subbed out. So it's just he didn't necessarily take advantage. Jerson was kind of in the back roads, or not back roads, but was kind of backed against the wall, and he kind of had to play that lineup that he did, given the fact that a couple of players just need rest too, especially given we want to see this team play a lot better at home than we do kind of on the road. We do want them to get points on the road because that's going to make the difference in the long game, but at the same time, you got to win those games at home. So giving players, especially starters, rest will be key. And I think that's what he kind of did. Yes, it was a poor showing, but I think it's for the long run than the short run.
You brought up a good point, actually. Leagues Cup, more Open Cup. Also, specifically those two, because short-term contracts only apply to those competitions, not MLS. For MLS, they already got Michael Salazar, okay? But you brought up a good point. You got Leagues Cup coming up. Coach Wilmer Cabrera has said on the record he's going to be using RGV players for that match. So previous and following that match, you're probably not going to be able to use your most of your starting 11. So you're going to have to use your backups. You're going to have to use your reserves for that match. He's already seen Camilo Monroy play a couple minutes. He's already seen Lincoln Lemoyne play a couple of minutes. He's already seen Kevin Rodriguez play a couple of minutes in certain positions. He didn't really see Mena. He needs to prepare to see if Robert Coronado is called up to the Dynamo for those matches. And they're not going to send Junqua either because he's a reserve for the Dynamo, and he's probably going to be playing that match against Club America. It's one of those things where, hey, if he leaves, you're going to have to step up, and I need you to show me if you can do that. And guess what? He didn't show that he could do that.
Yep.
And that is what hurts me the most. The fact that our bench went required on, for the most part, has kind of been very subpar. Let's remember that match against LA Galaxy 2. At LA Galaxy 2. We played a backup team. We played with a backup team that match against LA Galaxy 2. A team that was struggling to be consistent. We were completely torn apart in the first half when we had most of those backups playing. Once he brought in Michael Salazar, once he brought in Malik Foster, once he brought in, I believe it was Isidro Martinez, things looked better for RGV. This game as well. Once you brought in Robert Coronado to help push that back line out of the back and try to help out the attackers create some offense, things looked a whole lot better for the team. So you're a part of this roster. These players are part of this roster. It's about time that when Coach Echeverry calls your name before that match, or calls your name the day before when he calls that starting 18, or calls that 18, you better go out there on the pitch and show why you deserve to be here. Show why you deserve for the Dynamo to look at you as a prospective for future first teamer for the Dynamo. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't show it at RGV, we know that the whole point of RGV is to give players to the Dynamo. And if you don't cut it with RGV, what makes you think you're going to cut it at the Dynamo?
Exactly. And, of course, give the players time. And another thing on Wilmer Cabrera Jr., this is one big thing. He's going back to college. He's going back, not, of course, to study, really. Well, yes, that is part of it, but he is going back to also play. And so that's going to help him out in the future. But at the same exact time, it's also another question, is he really thinking about the USL as much as just him getting ready for Butler when he goes and plays soccer there? So it's a bit of just, what is his priorities right now? What are his priorities right now? Is his priority still to focus up and play with RGVFC? Because right there showed, does he really care about this team as much as he used to? Is he ready just to book it and go up to Butler, which God knows where Butler is, really, because I've never looked at a map and said, oh, that's where that school is. No. But the point being, was he really focused or is he focused on this team? Because, yes, he's been subpar all season, and we kind of knew that he was going. So it's just a lot of, yes, he does need to mature soccer-wise, but at the same exact time, has his priorities for RGVFC been, focused up on playing for RGVFC, or has he been thinking of something else?
Now, here's one thing that would be interesting to see for those who follow Butler more closely. It would be interesting to see how Wilmer Cabrera Jr. does with Butler, because if he does well with Butler, it means either one of two things. Either he wasn't really talent-wise to be playing along 20, 30-year-olds in a professional league, or was his mentality not good enough for the professionals? Mm-hmm. It's either one of those two things. And I think college would be a good time frame for him to develop his mentality, his mental strength a whole lot more alongside other players his age that are going through similar things. Obviously it's not going to be the same development as though he was playing, being thrown inside the arena, along with a hungry lion trying to eat you kind of thing. But at least he'll get a chance to focus on getting his talent, up to par, et cetera, et cetera. But going back also, as well, It's one of those things where we talked about it before. We have a really good starting 11, but it seems like our backups, there's a huge gap in talent between our starting 11 and our bench slash reserves. And when it comes time to having to use those reserves, whether for injury, call ups, etc., we look at it and we're like, holy smokes! Like, are they going to give us that kind of performance like they did against LA2, against Real Monarchs? Or are we going to see, or are they going to finally step up and prove to Coach Echeverri that they can fight for that top spot, to take the spot away from Coronado, take the spot away from Andrew Samuels, Isidro Martinez, etc., or Chuy Enriquez, etc. And I think that's one of the biggest things that these reserves need to prove to Coach Echeverri. Don't prove it to us. We don't matter. Like, we as fans, like, don't matter in these decisions, in these technical decisions. We can talk all we want about all of this, and we might be right in our opinion. We might be wrong in our opinion. At the end of the day, they're opinions based on what we can see in the match.
Yeah.
But who has a more in-depth view on what happens every week in and week out inside that team? Coach Echeverri and his staff. These guys need to prove to them. They need to prove to Coach Cabrera. They need to prove to Matt Jordan that they deserve to be with at RGV for one more year at least, to continue to develop and hopefully make it to the Dynamo. If you don't, adios, papacito. O sea, the Dynamo doesn't want players like that. I mean, if they gotten rid of good players, what makes you think that not so good players are going to stay?
It depends on their age, I think. It goes back to that. I think really it's more age-wise than kind of you can be there for 3 years. I think because Charlie Ward was at the age that he was, that's why he had to go. Of course, there's a couple of different stories than just that, but the players that had actually had to kind of have been forced to be released from Houston, it goes back to, I think it was really their age more than skill level. Because, I mean, you're saying, yeah, they're getting rid of good players. Question is, of course, what age are the Cabrera twins? What age are those players that are even worse, of course, than the starting 11 right now? And it's funny because you also mention the big gap in just talent that this team has. This has been a problem, I think, since the start. Maybe not since 2016, but really from 2017 on, that had been a problem. We had noticed it last year, too. I remember having these conversations as well when Jorginho James would come off the bench or someone like that. We would see kind of the talent effect drop, the skill level kind of drop. And so, yes, they need to get better. This is a team for players that need to grow, but they need to grow kind of at a fast rate, at least for 2 years. And, of course, at a certain age, Houston Dynamo's going to say, no, it's not worth it. If you're not going to improve to a certain level where you're going to at least be called up to the Open Cup first round, well, then, yeah, later. See you soon when we play against you in Open Cup or whatever. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. Of course, it also goes back to who's getting these players. It's Matt Jordan, as well as, of course, we have open tryouts. Well, maybe we actually need to get better players in general just to get up there. Maybe more players like Michael Salazar would be great just in the offseason in general, to look at those types of players that might have been in the MLS for a bit and just need a bit more polishing up, bring them back down. I think those have been the key players that we've gotten. It's the same with Carlos Small and the same with even the Jamaican of Malik Foster. That's another great example too. The way that he's kind of been at the top. So a lot of that I think would be perfect.
I think the problem here in the way that this is designed in such a short term, the way this system is designed in the short term, the problem that I see is that um, other teams they usually have number one, they usually have a longer process. Number two, they try to keep their best players if they're like a rich team, um, and they'll probably sell the highest their best player for money, right? But they're
Yeah.
not gonna try and get rid of like five players at a time, five of their best players at a time, like RGV.
Uh huh.
RGV, you look at it, it's like four, three, like players during the season and the off season being taken up by the Houston Dynamo, uh, or the Dynamo deciding, hey, you know what, it's your time to go, like Todd Warden. And then not only are you getting rid of your top players, but you're also getting rid of your bottom players, which means you have a lot of money you have to spend in order to rebuild that roster rather than gradually making a competitive team on the basis of I keep my good players, I keep a base of this roster, and I'm just going to keep on adding players that are at equal or better than what I currently have. What does this lead to? You lead to a very competitive starting 11, and you also have a bench that you know is going to be to prove to you that they can fight for that spot. Where if somebody gets injured or red carded, and they come in the next day, the next game or something, you're not going to see a big difference. They're going to be able to handle that position. That's what I'm trying to get at. Whereas with the Toros, it seems like every 2 years we have to start almost from scratch with this roster. And so you get your decent players, so you're starting 11, but the Dynamo has to handle their roster, has to handle our roster. At the end of the day, you build a starting 11, but then you have to rely on your on bringing in players from open tryouts or whatever to try to fill in that roster, and you have a huge gap because of number one, lack of experience, and number two, well, mentality wise as well, there's a difference.
Yeah. The good thing is, though, of course, and we've kind of noticed this, we've seen the well, we've gotten draft picks now, and not necessarily have the draft picks ended up going straight to the starting 11, and that's from the MLS Super Draft. So it's becoming more of kind of a minor league thing, and that's great, especially for Houston Dynamo in a way as well. You get those players, you know that they're probably going to be up there in about a year or even half of a year, and then you'll see that. So that's pretty cool indeed, as in it can kind of fill up those gaps just in case for it being on the bench or whether it being kind of starter. And I mean the best kind of I guess the best example would be Brad Dunwell. We've seen him start a couple of games, but we've seen him mainly on the bench. So that's been pretty cool there to see that when he does come out, of course, he's going to actually show some talent. So that's good. We can kind of course, that will end up going into the starting 11, and then at the end of the time, go on to Houston Dynamo. So, of course, it's kind of a good cycle, but that's kind of what you need to help out with the problem. Yes, of course, you're still going to have to fill a lot more of those spots through open trials, but most likely you can get a couple of those players to really help out the second team on RGVFC at least.
So, going back into the comments, Callo says, so the reason RGV ends up having to let go of their players is they have to stock to the Dynamo's needs. If the player is no longer of any use to the Dynamo, there's 100% no reason to let them stick around. And that's exactly how it works.
Exactly.
This
We're
this team is built to bring life to the Dynamo. This team isn't really built to satisfy the needs of RGV. This team, its whole existence is give me stuff for the Dynamo. And I'm going to have to say this, but I think it's our fault as fans that the Houston Dynamo doesn't at least acknowledge some needs of, for example, what I'm trying to get at is, uh, it seems like a lot of the times the Houston Dynamo kind of makes some things with their loans where they have to play, and they kind of cut some of the chemistry that was being built by some of our good starting 11, Coronado, Adams, Connor Donovan. And we've talked about it before. One or two, it's fine. It's just a supplement to this team. When you got four players coming in from the Dynamo at one time in the starting 11, it does kind of affect the team negatively.
Yep.
And a lot of RGV fans aren't happy with that, saying that they should buzz off. Well, not necessarily buzz off completely, but kind of give Echeverry a little bit more of leeway to decide when he can put in those players. Like, for example, so let's say in an example of Eric Bird. Eric Bird's coming back from an injury, and the Dynamo staff, say he has to play 45 minutes this week. Right now, it seems like Dynamo sends a player, he has to start. And Coach Echeverry probably had some other ideas, but now he has to put in Eric Bird, right? So a lot of RGV fans want to see, like, give him a little bit more leeway to control that aspect the way he wants it to be. So, like, for example, hey, maybe not put him in the first half, but have him play in the second half, kind of see if my team can get like a decent run in or something, where especially when you have a lot of players from the Dynamo being loaned in. That's one of the things that I've been seeing a lot in social media from RGV fans. But I feel like if we truly want for the Dynamo to listen to the fans of RGV and cater more to the needs of RGV as a team and as a club, then I think social media is kind of the wrong place to bark up. I think I don't know of a better way, exactly of an example, but I know that there's a better way than just going to social media and ranting about it, or ranting about it in a group chat. They're not going to listen to us through there. There's better ways. I don't know how. Don't ask me. Like, I wish I knew.
Well, yeah, because if you were to actually go up to some front office person during a soccer game, guess what? You are banned for life from basically MLS, ever going to an MLS game as well. So it's just, yeah, it's tough.
Another thing is, why should the Dynamo listen to RGV fans when we can't fill the stadium? There's no talk about the Toros in our local media. Local media isn't writing. Local media isn't putting pressure, making sure that this team is competitive, or talking about this team in general. Why should the Dynamo cater to our needs when to them nobody cares? Nobody cares about what we do with this team. If they win or lose, I mean, it's still gonna be there. I mean, we're not gonna make the fans aren't really talking about it, so it seems like they don't really care. There's no support. There's no talk about it on the media. The media isn't covering, so we can do whatever we want, and nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna care. That's one of the reasons why Glenn Davis was so against having RGV be the USL Championship affiliate for the Dynamo.
Yeah. Yet I think it would still be the same exact way. We've talked about it before. You have kind of mentioned it as well that yes, it has kind of gotten better, but this I think could be temporary just because Houston Dynamo's kind of doing well this season. So if they were to, let's say, having just a regular season just like they did last year, as in not amazing but not as bad and barely missing the playoffs again, would they get this type of coverage that they are getting right now? Probably not. They would probably not necessarily be talked about over there. And what makes you think it's going to be exactly the same way if they had them right in their backyard too? I don't think it would really change. It's just the way that media has been for now. And it's a tough time for media just in general. You look at the newspapers, you look at all this crap, they are cutting. They are no doubt cutting jobs. And then half the time they don't have anyone to really fill or write the stories because, well, Texas is a big state. You're going to have a lot of news even if it goes to sports. Why? Rockets. Why? Texans. Astros. Even somewhat of the dumb little rugby team that they have there, the SaberCats.
Ouch. Ouch.
Well, I'm sorry. They're almost dead last every single season. So...
Hey, he knows his stuff. I do have to give it to you. You know your stuff about.
Yeah.
If you know you know about that. So Callow says, actually, start with my dad says it's hard to accept us as fans. Something that's hard for us to accept as fans is that we are not competing for a championship. We are competing to help the Dynamo. That is why our love to our team is limited. I wouldn't go as far as that. I would see more of it as kind of a I don't know, how can you explain that? I just don't think it's a whole thing about our love to this team is limited, because we love this team to death. The diehards love this team to death, but it's just so hard sometimes to feel excited about a team when we start getting on a groove. We start getting players that are kind of going above and beyond our expectations, when we know that
they're going to get pulled away right under us.
They're going to get pulled away into the Dynamo, and it's hard to kind of feel excited for this team, because if we do good, we can't enjoy it for a long time because we know they're going to be going to the Dynamo. And if they don't do good, then it's like, well, what is the Dynamo thinking, like, of bringing these players? So at the end of the day, with RGV fans, the Dynamos, it's a lose-lose situation. Because no matter how you see it, the Dynamo is always at fault. If they have good players, well, they're pulling them away from us. When we don't have good players, well, it's because Matt Jordan sucks at scouting. So I do kind of understand why Dynamo fans can be very empathetic, impatient with RGV fans and our gripes. But I think both sides have cases to their argument. I just wish that RGV fans would, like I said, find a better way to voice our opinions without antagonizing anybody else, or without antagonizing the other side, whether it's fans or the front office.
Yeah.
Because let's not forget, and Callow actually put it this way: the Dynamo doesn't care if their affiliate is an RGV or not. They can move those players to any stadium in any city in Texas and accomplish the same goals. The team isn't guaranteed. They could actually have that team way closer to Houston than they do. And we know that the reason RGVFC is in South Texas is to take advantage of that market, take advantage of our talent pool. We know there's a lot of good soccer players that are born in that live in the Rio Grande Valley, and the Dynamo is trying to tap that market for the future. That's why the Toros are there. It wasn't because Alonso Cantu, who, yes, he invested a lot, and we appreciate all of that. But at the end of the day, this is a hybrid, and both sides had something to gain from this. Alonso Cantu has an investment, expand his brand, expand the name recognition of the Valley in the sports world. The Houston Dynamo, they want that RGV market. They want those Hispanics down there, those Hispanic fans to not only follow the Toros, but potentially be future Houston Dynamo fans. That's why they're here. They didn't do it out of their goodness of their heart. They have something to gain from here. So, like Callow said, and Sean has mentioned it many times, having a team is not a right but a privilege. And at any time, either Alonso Cantu pulls out of his investment, or the Dynamo says, you know what, we don't want this partnership anymore. We're taking our players, we're taking our coach, we're taking our technical staff, we're taking them to another city. Y a ver cómo se las arreglan to get staff, to get players, to get scouting. And that's the thing with this partnership. Is at the end of the day, unless somebody else forks up the money, we're stuck with the Houston Dynamo until they say enough's enough, or our mission is complete. So we do have to put up with this kind of relationship, but I feel that there is some leeway somewhere where we can we can make known our opinions and kind of try to accommodate the relationship to be more symbiotic and helpful for both sides, not just for the Houston Dynamo in the eyes of RGV fans.
Yep.
Sean, I had no idea you were calling in on the show. Sorry. I didn't even have it connected because I wasn't planning on having. I totally forgot to turn off the thing. But if you want to call right now, just go ahead and call. I'll open the line for you right now. So yeah, that's man. Not wasted, but we talked a whole hour just on this, and just went from one thing to another. It was a really, really good discussion. You used to call me on my cell phone. Hey, what's up, Jake? Well, welcome to the show. Appreciate you watching right now. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think, in summary, for my point of view, is RGB fans have to be a lot more active, and to, like we said last week, to get the media involved, and based on that, see the Dynamo seeing that, hey, there really is a following for RGV, for the Toros at RGV. Welcome to Down in the Valley. Is this Sean?
It is Sean.
How are you doing, Sean?
I'd be better if the phone was answered the first time.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I guess.
It's all good. I assumed you had it connected because you had the phone number sitting at the top of your video there.
Yeah, that was my bad. I was kind of rushed because #290 traffic.
Sounds about right. So I wanted to call in because,
No? Sean, you there? Hold on. Are you there, Sean? What the hell happened? Oh. Kind of gonna. Sean, call in again. I don't know. I swear everything's been going wrong today. There we go. Sean, you there?
yeah, we're gonna try this again. I cut off my Wi-Fi on the phone, so no Wi-Fi calling, but
Oh, okay, that
should be okay.
yeah, that's a lot better. It sounded so soft right now as well when you called.
Huh, weird. So I wanted to call because we've talked about this a couple of times. I've brought it up a few times. A few people, namely many people, kind of thought I was talking out my backside when I brought it up, saying that the Dynamo, from a technical perspective, actually pay for the player salaries for RGV, and including the technical staff salaries as well.
Which we know is true.
And go ahead, Edson.
Which we know is true.
Which we now know. Well, we know it's true, but now we've had it confirmed through the MLS Ambition rankings question and answer portion, where it was one of the questions that was asked and answered was related to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for RGV fans to remember that, because that there was that whole talk of independence and this, that, and the other. The thing is your owner's not even, your ownership and your business operations aren't even paying your player salaries. And we talked about it before. I mean, at the end of the day, what would happen if the Dynamo did pull out of RGV, if they left it just to Cantu and his group? Would they be able to truly fund and cover an entire roster's worth of player salaries? And to that extent, would you have the same level of talent that you have now? It's easy to gripe about the talent you have now because that's all you can look at. But think about how much worse your team could be if the talent level was even less than you have now. So I just think, and I feel, as a Dynamo fan in particular, it's important for RGV fans to remember, and I know it can be frustrating because, frankly, I watch RGV from time to time, and I get frustrated, as a Dynamo fan from the perspective of RGV. But it's important to remember that Big Daddy Dynamo is there because they're paying to be part of this partnership, and so I think Callow hit the nail on the head, and I've said it multiple times, and I hope the point really gets across. RGV is not guaranteed a professional soccer team in any way, shape, or form, and if fans can't wrap their head around that, then I don't know if there's going to be a long-term viable solution. I don't know if fans are ever going to be content or happy, and that's okay. They can be not content, and they can be not happy about the situation. But I do think there needs to be a realization that you get kind of what you get, and it's going to be as good as the Dynamo can allow it to be with what they're bringing in. And if the Dynamo are paying all this money for these player salaries, then guess what? They have control over what they do with their players and who they send and who they call up and that sort of thing. And I think that's the reason that Dynamo wanted to go into the partnership in this way, with the hybrid partnership built the way it's built, is so that they do have that control, so that they can have some say in whether players are played or not. Because at the end of the day, if the Dynamo player gets sent down or loaned down to RGV during the MLS season, whether it's for injury recovery or a player that just is out of form or not getting minutes, if that player doesn't end up getting minutes with RGV, then what's the point of having that relationship outside of just youth player development? Then at that point, why would you even be paying for a league championship team, a USL championship team? Why wouldn't they just pay for a League One or a League Two team instead? Which they are, because they're paying for Brazos Valley Cavalry too. So, our RGV fans can look at it that way. They could be Cavalry right now. They don't have to be a USL championship team. So I just wanted to, I know that's not comforting things to hear, but I think it's good to have perspective in light of the struggles and frustration, and to understand that there is a path forward in terms of player development, and that RGV can be a very good team in the long term. But in the short term, there's going to be struggles because your players have to develop. They have to mentally develop that fortitude and that mental kind of strength to be able to push through and be able to figure out how to have chemistry on 1 to 2 days' notice. Because guess what? In MLS, you're not guaranteed you're going to start every match. In MLS, you're not guaranteed to start next to the same center back match after match, or even for the majority of the season. You're not guaranteed to start at outside back or have the same winger above you. You have to be able to flex and be able to fit in no matter what situation is presented to you. Perfect example of this, and hopefully RGV players can take this and RGV fans can take this as a sign of things that should be the way that they should be, is Memo Rodriguez. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter who you put around him. It doesn't matter where you put him. It doesn't matter how you play him. It doesn't matter how frequently you play him. He's going to find a way to perform, and he's going to find a way to be involved. And that's if RGV could have a team full of players like that, it wouldn't matter who the Dynamo sent down and who the Dynamo called up. RGV players would be able to get over it and move on and make do with what they have. At the end of the day, players need to get out of this mentality of me, and need to get into the mentality of team. And you don't have to have the chemistry at the USL Championship level that you do at MLS level. What you need to have is the fortitude to understand that just because the guy next to you isn't the same guy you've gotten comfortable with doesn't mean he's any less of a player. So, anyways, that's all I had, Edson. I wanted to share that with you guys.
Oh, I definitely appreciate your input as always, Sean. You know, it's sometimes it's really good to play devil's advocate one way or another. And like I said, really appreciate all of your input. It's just one of those things where you look at it, you see the potential of our starting 11, and then you come these games where Dynamo sends in all these players, and all of that chemistry between them is broken, and you lose games where you feel like, man, like these are points that we could have gotten more at it. We could have gotten more of this game, especially with how compact, how competitive the Western Conference is right now.
Sure. And I'll say to that end that one of the things the Dynamo hope to do over the long term, and again, it's not going to be just like anything Dynamo related. It's not a 1-year plan. This is a long-term plan. They hope to build the depth up at RGV just like they've done with the Dynamo, where it doesn't matter if you don't have your starting 11. You still have players that are worth playing across the entire spectrum. You have competition at every position that's equitable no matter who is playing at what position and whether your starter is available or not. And that's their goal with RGV, just as it is with the Dynamo, because at the end of the day, that is a good thing for the Dynamo to have that same level of competition at every position at RGV, because that means technically they would have 3 to 4 player depth instead of just the 2-player depth they have currently up at the senior team. So, take solace in the fact that the Dynamo want it to be that way, but they also need to see the fruit being bared from them having players down at RGV that they want to use. And it's not to say that they're not long-term going to have players that stay at RGV even when the player is playing well. But again, there's that balance between depth at both the senior team and the USL Championship team level that's going to have to be built over years. And one of the advantages you guys are going to have is coming up very soon, that U17 crop from the Dynamo, which is a very good academy team. You guys are going to reap the rewards of that because a lot of those players are going to get signed homegrown contracts or otherwise and end up with RGV. So you could very well have 5 to 6 players influx in the next 2 to 3 years just from that. And those players are going to be very good players for RGV. So, something positive to grow on, something positive to keep in mind as we move forward. So, but that's all I got for you guys. Good luck with the show. Keep doing what y'all do. Y'all are amazing and awesome, and looking forward to getting a chance to talk to you, Edson, a little more tomorrow.
All right. Appreciate your call, Sean. And once again, guys, tomorrow, 7 p.m., Generation Orange. We'll talk a little bit more in depth, Sean and I, about this. But thank you, man, and have a good night.
For sure. And Jacob, keep streaming, brother. Keep streaming. Love it.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.
Jacob,
Yo.
thoughts?
A lot to unpack from, of course, what Sean says. And yeah, I kind of agree, for sure. I mean, yeah,
I think my
yeah,
big
for the most part, it's pretty good. It's just, yeah, it's tough because for now, of course, you're talking about long slash short term, and for us, compared to long term, we're thinking the longevity of a season because that's kind of what we think of. But of course, it's over a long period of time. It's over years and years and years. And yes, of course, we're going to get those homegrown contracts, but for how long and how much longer till and all this other stuff. And we have to use, there's just a lot of factors in general. And I think, like we said before, I think it would stay the same no matter where this team went. It would stay the same. It's just, yeah, of course, you're trying to get people in here. I think RGVFC might have made just a tiny bit of a mistake by making the stadium so big as it is. We could have made it 6,000 to 7,000 instead of a 10,000 seat stadium. I understand they wanted to host a lot of other things and it's worked, but now of course it's a different owner. It's different stuff like this, and so yeah, it's really tough to think of how it would go or how it will go in the future and things. So.
And I think that's what Sean's talking about right now. He says the tough part is that what RGV fans were sold versus what they are expected to endure now. And I think that's the issue with the difference between this hybrid relationship and true MLS2 teams. With true MLS2 teams, you know that this is just going to be a developmental. It's a plus when you have a Real Monarchs or a Portland Timbers 2 that's a 2 team, but they're doing so well in the USL Championship. Keep in mind right now that Portland Timbers is pretty much fighting in the top parts of the Western Conference, and Real Monarchs in their first year won the Supporter Shield in the USL Western Conference. So it's a plus, but you know that this is a developmental team, and all of the fans, the few fans that go week in and week out, they know that and they support that. But when RGV came in, it was touted as a championship winning team or a potential championship winning team rather than a developmental team. They went in with the marketing at that time. They went with the mentality of an independent club rather than a farm team for the Houston Dynamo. And I think that disparity in expectation versus reality I think that's what's kind of putting us off. Now, just because, and I mentioned Real Monarchs, I mentioned Portland Timbers 2, there's also New York Red Bulls 2. Just because you're a developmental team does not automatically isolate you from being a championship fighting winning team. New York Red Bulls 2 has already won a USL Cup. So the possibility is there. It's just the question is, how long is it going to take us? And is this mentality of 2-3 years and by you're out, is it really long enough to really give us the results that they want? Like Sean said, having a bolstered up roster not only at USL, but also in the Dynamo first team. Because if you release all these players so soon, like I said before, it seems like you don't give this roster enough time to bolster itself in 2-3 years when all of a sudden now you have to get a fresh new batch of kids and start all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's tough. It's just that mentality. We've talked about it before as well. It goes all the way back to when you're trying to get fans. When you're trying to like invite someone here and saying, hey, this team is great. But then, and we've talked about it, the question is, are they in the top league? What league are they in? If they're in this league, that is not the top league. We don't have a top league team. I mean, and it goes back to even just looking at these teams in RGV in general. How many people did we bring this year to the Vipers just during the regular season? Yes, a lot more people because it was a new stadium. But just in general is what I'm trying to say is it was almost more than half empty sometimes for the games.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, of course, finally when they got good is when they brought in big crowds. And so, of course, it's tough when not only media sometimes doesn't cover it, because that's A, and then B is also you got to win games. And C is, well, do you have the talent? And of course, it just takes time to get talent. And we have it fine. It's just a matter of, can this team learn to play together no matter in what circumstances? And yeah, I agree with Sean. Week in, week out, especially for MLS, you're not going to be playing with the same player. But of course, these players are super young, and they need to get out of that mentality. And I think that's why, even going back to the Real Monarchs game, why that lineup is going to be so important to see for the rest of this season. We're already starting to see, okay, this player kind of wasn't able to play well with this, of course, one player, really, and that was, well, actually, I'm kind of blanking on the name.
Sergio Mena?
Right. Exactly, Mena. We saw that. We've already gotten adjusted to Samuels, and now, of course, we're getting Lemoyne adjusted. So it's getting those players adjusted for sure. And they're young. They're out of college, of course, most of them, or not even just out of college, but just on this team. And so, of course, it takes time to build that mentality. You think that all those MLS teams right off the bat had those players that were like, okay, I can play with anyone on that pitch. I doubt that's the way that it went. They started off just like this, and so, yeah, it's going to take time. But it's over time, and of course, us being humans in general, we don't like that. We like success instantly. So it's always tough to bring out this big picture scenario saying it's over time. And that's one thing that's always tough. And of course, we don't like that. So, of course, we'll go and complain on Twitter or something like that. And of course, there's always a better way. And we will see improvement. I think we really will. It's just going to take time, and this is a perfect start, is to get those lineups. So, and I guess we can also start to move on to this week's game versus Colorado Switchbacks. I would not be shocked to see some type of lineup just like this, of course, without Michael Salazar, and probably still not with Kyle Adams starting, but Kyle Adams on the bench, just to give him a rest of at least 45 minutes, if not a bit longer, for him to come back on. So yeah, Robert Castellanos with Connor Donovan and Samuels, and probably someone other than Mena right there. I think, yeah, Mena can come on after out of the bench, and we could be fine.
Now, one of the things that I saw I watched the match, the end, I think like the last 20 minutes of the match that the Colorado Springs Switchbacks played against, I'm trying to remember who they played against. I think it was Tacoma. Yeah, it was against Tacoma. They won 3-0, but one of the players that kind of popped out from these 20 minutes that I saw was Ismaila Joan. This is a player that he's a left back, but he has so much speed and power, and he was able to get back past the Tacoma Defiance defense like nothing. Like, it looked like he was playing more of a winger than playing as a left back. And he's one of the players that this team is going to have to look out for. And I really think that, like you said, this is going to be another one of those matches where Coach Echeverry is going to want to experiment around with this starting 11. Because we already know that he's got his full starting 11. He's already got it down to the T, right? It's gonna be Michael Nelson when he gets sent in, or Nico Corti, Andrew Samuels, Connor Donovan, Kyle Adams, Robert Coronado, Isidro, Romilio, Chuy, Wilmer Cabrera Jr., Malik Foster, and I was gonna say Michael Salazar, but he's gone. But here's the thing, though. We'll get back on that later on. But for this match, I'm starting to see this whole thing where this gives him another opportunity, since overall the switchbacks haven't been playing well. So it kind of gives them an opportunity to go up against a more comfortable rival, to get used to being a starting 11, get used to the rest of the players. We can probably see Zach Jackson playing as a right back. We might see Nico Lemoyne again. We might see the biggest question right now is the striker position. Number one, who is the Dynamo going? If the Dynamo is going to loan somebody, who are they going to loan? Michael Salazar or Ronaldo Pena? So that's number one, because right now we don't have any strikers.
Mm-hmm.
Malik Foster's in Gold Cup. Michael Salazar is with the Dynamo. Aldo Quintanilla is out injured. He's still 2 months away from being able to play soccer again. You also got the right wing to take care of, which will probably be Nico Lemoyne again. Do you continue with Wilmer Cabrera Jr. as a cam, or can you try out a different formation instead of going 4-2-3-1? Try a 4-4-2. You know how well it worked against Real Monarchs. Michael Salazar and Carlos Small, it seemed like they played really well next to each other. Might want to that could be possible too. We know there's gonna be Chuy Enriquez. Will he get some rest? That's another incognito. But the biggest incognito is who you're gonna have a striker, who's gonna play in the left wing, and which other member of the bench and reserves are you gonna want to test at a starting 11 position to see how they react, especially when you know you got these other games coming up where you're not going to be you're probably not going to have your ideal starters.
Yeah, and I think for sure, I think Jerson has his answer for at least a striker. Yeah, maybe you go with a 4-4-2, but then, yeah, you've got Carlos Small right there, at least as one of the AKA strikers. Because we've seen him be able to perform, and, of course, we've seen him not. So it could be a toss-up. We haven't really seen Carlos Small be able to start in a while, and I think if he does start, even with a 4-4-2 or even still a 4-2-3-1, I think he'll be fine and be able to maybe be our lone striker at one point. Of course, that's if Houston don't send back down Michael Salazar. And of course, he just played. Yes, he only played less than
10 minutes.
Just about half.
He played about 12 minutes.
Yeah, you played about 12 minutes, but I'd still say, yeah, if you want to start him, if he does get sent down, which, yes, of course you have to with the Houston Dynamo, so I take that back. Yes, he does start. If that happens, yeah, I still think you can go with a 4-4-2. I'm kind of curious to know when the last time that they actually did end up going with a 4-4-2 RGVFC, because I know that it's been a while since.
It's been a while. I think
they stuck with the 4-2-3.
I think it was more into the early parts of the season, and that was like in the middle of a match where, based on a substitution, he would sub in another striker for Wilmer or for another midfielder. It has been done before, but not right out of the gate. So you also have to remember that next week we have another Open Cup match. Dynamo has another Open Cup match. So there's another thing we have to see for this match against Colorado Springs Switchbacks. Now, I think we got lucky this time against Austin Bold for them only calling up Kyle Adams and Andrew Samuels and not playing them due to the fact that they got a little bit rowdy. Austin Bold, tried to come back due to the complacency, the lack of fitness on some of the players. I know Coach Wilmer Cabrera mentioned that he was kind of disappointed in and Ronaldo Pena not being able to withstand the whole 90 minutes now. So
that could be one person that we see come back down is Ronaldo Pena, just in general, just because, of course, it goes back to a bit of a farm team. We've already seen him down here just in general to try and get up to that 90 minutes. Now, has that benefited him? Apparently, it hasn't yet.
Well, keep in mind, it's only been, one game that he's played, and it was the one against Orange County. And here's the thing. Here's another, and I think it'll probably be Ronaldo being called down because Michael Salazar has that in favor of him, that he's played a lot more minutes in these past weeks, close to 90, if not the whole 90 minutes, compared to Ronaldo Pena. Right now, the one who needs more match fitness is Ronaldo, not Michael Salazar. Michael Salazar, he can get the minutes now against whoever they play next week in the Open Cup. But right now, the one who is in dire need of getting back to fitness level is Ronaldo Pena. And that is why I believe if they're sending somebody down, it's going to be Ronaldo.
Yeah, and that's probably, it'll probably happen for sure. He hasn't played 90 minutes, and I was also mixing it up with who else has been down here that kind of reminds me of Ronaldo Pena. It's I forget his name, but either way, he has been down with RGVFC as well, just because
Fuenmayor?
he needed point. Yeah, Fuenmayor. There we go. So that's one player that I was really thinking of in the long term. But either way, Ronaldo Pena, I wouldn't be shocked. And of course, it also goes back to how much does Houston want to take this Open Cup seriously? Do they want to play a couple of RGV players for at least 2 of the Open Cup games, or do now right out of the box, right after the first round, play with their starters once again, just to, of course, or just play with their first team just in general, just so that they can, once again, get back to the finals and maybe win that and go to the Champions League again. So it can go either way. I know that the fans were very pleased with the win last year, and of course that got them a berth into the Champions League. And I know that they probably want that berth once again. It will help benefit not only RGV, but it will help benefit Houston Dynamo once again with the long-term playing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now, another kind of thing to consider as well would be, because you talked about RGB players used in Open Cup, right? But here's the thing. I don't think it's going to get easier from Austin Bold, because now you have a higher probability of getting going up against MLS teams. You have FC Dallas against OKC Energy right now. FC Dallas is winning 3-0. So we know Frisco is going to go on to the next level, which is the 5th stage. Minnesota United is defeating Sporting Kansas City 5-1. Just changed to 5-1. So Minnesota looks to be the one that's going to be passing. So you got either Minnesota or FC Dallas in the next round. Let me see what the. Wonder if there's an actual bracket. 20.
I wouldn't be shocked if you weren't able to find it. They're always very bad about this tournament, just in general, or bracket-wise, and things like that.
Yeah. We may have something here. Bracket. So, all right. So here's the bracket: Houston Dynamo. Oh, yeah, this is bad. Is this last year's or this year's? Oh, it's
It
6.
would probably be FC Dallas, if I had to guess.
I don't know.
Because just given the fact that we have played them in the past, we kept playing Sporting Kansas City as well, and we played both of those teams in around this time of the Open Cup.
All right. So it's either. So right now it's Colorado Rapids versus New Mexico, and I think New Mexico is winning. Minnesota United versus Sporting Kansas City. Houston Dynamo versus Austin Bold. We know the Dynamo passed, and then FC Dallas defeating Oklahoma City Energy. And there's not an actual like bracket to this, it appears. Let's take a look what they say. Call-ups for round of 16 are going to be limited to draws. Oh, so it's by draw. We won't know until tomorrow. We won't know who we go up against. So this isn't like a traditional bracket. This is more like, all right, here's the winners. All right, and then it's regionalized. All right, grab a ball. Okay, this team against this team, kind of thing. So thank you for that information, Callo. So we won't know until tomorrow who will play, but from what it appears, it's going to be against an MLS team more than likely. Mm-hmm. So this is why I highly doubt that we're gonna be seeing a lot more RGV players being called up, and I think we kind of passed the worst of it when it comes to that. I think it's more when we get closer to Leagues Cup to see how much that is going to affect us. Yeah. So I think we should be fine. We'll probably lose 1 or 2 again for next Tuesday or whenever they play, because even the date is still TBA.
Tuesday to Wednesday is probably it.
Yeah. So it's just gonna be a waiting game with the Open Cup, and. Yeah. But in the meantime, we have to get these other players that don't get a lot of minutes, make sure they do get minutes, and see who's up for the task and who's just there riding the wave. So, changing topics now. I was browsing through the interwebs on Friday, I believe. Friday or Saturday. It was Friday. And I found something interesting about Malik Foster. Originally, Transfer Market and Costa Rican media mentioned that this was just going to be like a 6-month loan for Malik Foster from Alajuelense to RGVFC. Now, there's actually talks, and what's the word I'm looking for? There's talks and rumors going around Costa Rica with people that are close to Alajuelense saying that the team is pondering, they're analyzing to loan out Malik Foster once for another season.
Yep.
Nothing has been confirmed yet. There hasn't been, as far as I know, as far as I've seen, there hasn't been a member of the front office going out there and confirm or deny these claims. So it's still up in the air with that. But it makes sense because they still have 5 foreign-born players on the team. There can only be 4 at one time on the pitch. So you can have four on the pitch, and then 1 has to be a reserve that can play another week or so on and so forth. But that's already kind of cutting it close to within the regulations of the Costa Rican League. That's why they loaned out Malik Foster. Now they're in a situation right now where these players have been doing decent with the team, and they're very reluctant right now to release any of them. So that puts him in a situation where, well, we have Malik Foster that has to come back, but we also don't want to get rid of these guys. So I don't know, Jacob, if you see this as a positive or it's pretty much you're in the same place as all this time when it comes to the speculation of Malik Foster. But I think it's just it's interesting for having seen this bit of news, because even if Alajuelense is willing to loan him out again, as far as the media over there mentions, there have been MLS teams that have been knocking on the door inquiring for Malik Foster.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he gets loaned out again, we might not be lucky enough to be able to get him back for another 6 months.
Yep.
Because either another MLS team, maybe even even Houston Dynamo can go up and say, okay, I saw what he saw at RGV. I like what he brings. I'm going to take him for myself.
Yeah.
So there's that situation with Malik Foster.
And I wouldn't be shocked if, well, I think the thing is we lose basically all rights to him when he goes technically back. And of course, yes, that Costa Rican team is looking to, of course, loan him out again. But the only thing is, I don't see Houston getting him back just due to that fact that, well, other MLS teams are looking at him and probably going to get him before we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably how it looks, just due to the fact that, well, we won't own the rights to him any longer after a certain amount of time once that transfer window is open and all that fun stuff, and when the Costa Rican team actually wants him. So it's very tough, and it's also tough to see us getting Malik Foster back just in general. But if they were to do exactly that, yes, there is a chance, because of course Malik would know that team, but it goes back to who's going to offer all the best stuff or money, or if it's a free transfer or anything like that. So
yeah,
it's going to be crazy. It's going to be interesting.
So let me read an excerpt from the article that was posted by La Nación in Costa Rica. It says Alajuelense needs to decide what to do with their foreign-born pieces for next tournament, because they're overpopulated with foreign-borns. Now the team has the Hondurans Alex Lopez, Luis Garrido, who for Dynamo fans might sound very familiar,
Churrito,
Henry Figueroa, and Roger Rojas, as well as the Argentinian Facundo Zavala and the other Honduran Christian Moreira. That's 6 foreign-borns. And then it says these last 2 are part of the reserve team, but they can play in first division. To that list, you can sum up the Jamaican Malik Foster, who is loaned out in the United States, or GV. Because only 4 foreign-borns can be called up for a match, so they can only be 4 foreign-borns in the 18. Not just in the starting 11. In the whole 18, there can only be 4 foreign-borns. The team, the Alajuelense, needs to analyze who is going to fill up those pieces allowed for foreign-borns for the next tournament. In this topic, ex-players that are part of the front office right now, Pablo Izaguirre and Pablo Gavas, said that they coincide in this conclusion. They would not bring back Malik Foster just yet. Both people talk about how good of a tournament Facundo Zavala has had, who in only 6 matches and 576 minutes in the pitch has shown that he has quality to stay on this team. Apparently, okay, so actually these guys are just ex-players that are analysts and not necessarily members of the front office. So he has shown to be a good player and has quality to stay with the team and be a regular in the first team. Especially when he's come up in as an emergency player, given the high quantity of injuries that this team has had this tournament. Facundo Zavala, blah, 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 he's done so much. About the rest of the foreign-borners, they analyze that it's a complex labor. It's going to be a complex job for the front office to decide who's going to continue. But if there's something that he has clear, is that Malik Foster needs to continue development outside of the country. So this is pure speculation on from 2 ex-members of this team, 2 retired players from Alajuelense. This is just speculation on their part. They feel that Malik Foster needs to continue his development elsewhere and be loaned out elsewhere. Everything else that I could manage to get a screenshot from that article talks about the rest of how good the rest of the foreign-borns are. But the thing is, there really isn't enough meat in this meal to justify saying, oh, this is going to be a done deal. Malik Foster is going to be loaned out again. This is just pure speculation. It's interesting to know about it because at least we know excuse me, that there's a chance. But this isn't something to be hopeful about. Number one, because of that, and number two, even if they did loan it out, like I said, who knows if he's coming back to Dynamo /RGV.
Yep.
Because as far as other articles I've seen, not only has there been interest in other MLS teams, in other USL teams, but also MLS teams. Now, remember that Malik Foster is American-born. So, he doesn't need a green card, and he counts as an American under the MLS system. So, this is a player that can be very useful to a lot of MLS teams and won't take up a foreign-born spot here in MLS. So, I think it's just one of those things where we just enjoy what we have left of Malik Foster, whether it's in the Gold Cup or maybe one last game with the Toros. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But until something more concrete comes out from Costa Rica, we're losing him at the end of the month.
Yep.
Oh, Callow, he's good. He's really good. He's extremely fast. But he's also technical. He isn't like a Jurgen Damm where he runs. But he has no idea what to do with the ball. He's a good player. He knows where to position himself. He knows how to shoot. He knows how to cross. And he knows, not only does he have speed, but he's also got strength as well. So he might be the natural replacement of Albert Elise, based on how similar the play styles are. Blues fan says, I wish to point this out. If Houston are trying to wait to see if they want to get Foster after the Gold Cup and he somehow goes off, there is no way they get him. Look at Corey Brown after the CCL.
Yep.
Yeah, if he does a good Gold Cup, you're not only going to have possible MLS teams going after him, you might have Liga MX teams. You might even have Europe coming in and knocking at the door to Alajuelense. And who's going to say no to a Liga MX or European team if you're a Costa Rican team?
Yeah. because everything is above Costa Rica, sports-wise.
Pura vida, carnal. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for the Malik Foster speculation that I posted about the last couple of days. I just wanted to inform about that there is some news about Malik Foster, but it's not something to write home about. Jacob, you have anything else you wanna add?
From this, not really, because we basically covered it all. It is all speculation, and that is the fun of off-season kind of for most teams, and also just the fun of transfer windows in general, because you get all this speculation that stuff like this might happen, and so it's always an interesting and fun, just scary way to really look at things, because it's all speculation, but it could be true in the long run. So hopefully we can get him back, but at the moment it really just looks like we got to focus up and hopefully just look for someone else in that long run just in case.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, and Matt Jordan's going to have to do his homework to see if he can get somebody for RGV at the same talent level or similar talent level to Malik Foster / Michael Salazar. And if they do, it's pretty much a whole thing of how long is he going to last with the Toros before he gets sent to RGV.
Yeah.
I think I think that's pretty much it for tonight's episode. I think because we covered all bases. If you guys want to read more about what Michael Salazar said in his debut with the Houston Dynamo, I did write an article about it in my personal webpage, and I'll go ahead and post the link right now so you guys can read it on your spare time. I talked to Michael Salazar after the game. We asked him about how he felt being back in MLS, how influential RGV was, and he's got a message for RGV fans as well. So be sure to take a good read upon that. Also, like we said, there's going to be Open Cup next week. This Saturday, we're going to have RGV versus Colorado Springs Switchbacks at 7:30 at HB Park. So be sure to go out there and support your Toros. It's one of the benchmarks to see if people actually love this team and care about this team. So go out there and go support your Toros at HB Park. Be loud and show the players, show coach, show front office that you love this team, and show the Dynamo that you love this team and want this team to stay and want this team to do their very best. I really would like to thank every one of y'all who were watching this stream today. Really appreciate all of your support. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, be sure to give it a like, be sure to share, and be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel as well. So, Blues fan wants us to give Gold Cup predictions for tomorrow.
Who's playing tomorrow? Because I know U.S. plays on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. They're one of the last groups.
I don't think he really literally means tomorrow, but this weekend. So, all right, Canada versus Martinique, Saturday at 6:30. I'm gonna go Canada, obviously. 3-1.
I'll go with the shock, a draw. We'll go 1-1.
And then you have Mexico versus Cuba. I feel like it's going to be a blowout. I'm gonna go 7-0.
Gonna go 3-0. Mexico, of course.
Haiti.
Because if they were to lose against Cuba, I think all of Mexico would be enraged, and it would just not be a good sight.
Oh, it'd be really bad for Tata Martino.
Yeah.
Haiti versus Bermuda.
That one I would also go with the draw, I think.
2-2.
Yeah, 2-2, yeah.
Costa Rica versus Nicaragua, 1-0 Costa Rica.
2-0 Costa Rica.
Curacao versus El Salvador. Blues fan. I'm going to say 2-1 El Salvador.
Let's say another draw. I think those games that are really unpredictable, I think we will see a lot of draws. And if I had to go, I'd probably go like 3-3.
Mhm. Hey, hold on. When? Oh, never mind. Because that one, that's on. All right. Jamaica versus Honduras. Ooh.
Jamaica versus Honduras, I think that will be probably a draw. Probably like a 2-2 draw.
And
I think both teams are very evenly matched.
I think Jamaica has looked really good. I mean, defeating the U.S. national team, even if it was a B team
In a friendly.
yeah. But I think they've looked good as a unit, and I'm gonna have to. I know Honduras has Elise and Kyoto, but I'm gonna go with a surprise and say 2-1 Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. This group right here it's going to be a very interesting one. But yeah, for that first game, I say draw, and both those teams will be set for just to advance out of their group.
Last two out of match day one, last two games, Panama versus Trinidad and Tobago. I'm gonna go 2-0 Panama.
Yeah, Panama win easily 3-1.
USA versus Guyana.
I'm gonna go with USA win 2-0, and because of course this team's gonna be a lot different. They're gonna have a lot more actual starters than kind of bench players that they've been having, which were the super young ones. But yeah, 2-0 win.
I'm going to have to go. I think USA is surprisingly going to struggle, but they're not going to tie. I think they'll take it. I think they'll take it 2-1, but it's gonna be a lot more difficult than what anybody else would think. Because lately the national team, because of all the experimenting going on with Greg Berhalter, I think they're gonna struggle against Guyana. I sincerely hope I'm wrong, and they blow out Guyana. But I feel because these two preparation matches were done with players that that aren't really going to be starters, and your starters aren't playing, how fit are they going to be coming into this match is going to be the real question.
Well, most of them have been playing with their clubs. If they're not from Europe, most of them have been playing with their clubs for a while now.
But like Christian Pulisic, how long has
He's
it been
staying fit pretty well? I've follow him on Instagram, and he's been doing soccer drills and all that. He's staying pretty fit.
Okay. But it's not. I don't think it's the same as actually playing a match.
And also they've been at the Naval Academy practicing almost every day too, out there. So they've been really staying together for the past month or so since this whole call-up situation stuff has been going on, which has been close to a month.
So Blues fan says that the match with Jamaica is actually going to be in Jamaica. Well, the match against Honduras.
don't believe that is true at all. I believe all matches are in the United States. That is how it has been for a while.
Yeah, because Google's has it. Google has it that it's in Kingston. No, actually, it is. So in 2019, they expanded the tournament to having a couple of matches outside of the U.S. So one of Costa Rica's matches is going to be at Costa Rica, and Jamaica is going to have their doubleheader there as well. So the matches between, let me go back. So the matches between Haiti and Bermuda and Costa Rica versus Nicaragua, they're going to be in Costa Rica. Curacao, El Salvador, and Jamaica versus Honduras will be in Jamaica.
You know, I mean, yes, granted, Honduras and Jamaica aren't that far to travel to. Same with Costa Rica. But that's travel. And you're traveling out longer, different. That's weird.
You gotta
very, very strange.
I mean, you gotta get the approval from the rest of the members of CONCACAF. I mean, they want their piece. They want their piece of the pie too.
I mean, South American Cup should be doing that too. Then play a game in Argentina, play a game in El Salvador, play a game in Brazil, play a game everywhere, and then of course have your final probably in Brazil. If I'm not mistaken, that's actually where it's at.
Well, I agree that it's.
So
I do agree that it's very eccentric, but I guess they're trying it out and see if that works. So I guess we'll see.
Trying it out to the teams that might not make it to the finals or even out of their group.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's predictions for the first match day of the CONCACAF Gold Cup. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully, the best of luck to the U.S. men's national team. Hopefully, they can get their act together in the tournament, because what we saw in the past two friendly matches, it left a lot to be desired. And I know there's going to be a lot of talk in social media about Greg Berhalter, but that's neither here nor there. And also, you know, the women's national team totally obliterated Thailand, 13-0.
13-0. The big question is, what's going to happen versus Chile?
Before we get to Chile, and I really want to get your thoughts on this, because it's been a hot issue everywhere. What are your thoughts about that score and the celebrations? Do you think it was over the top, or do you think celebrating those goals, their 10th, 11th, or whatever, is justified?
The celebrations were a bit much. Yes, I would agree, but the goal scoring was not. When you have that opportunity to score that many goals, you take that advantage. You take that opportunity, because what is Sweden going to do in that group now? Their next game is versus Thailand. Their next game is versus that team, and so that's really keen to think, because you've got Sweden, who has been fighting for that first place. You want to get that first place. You want to get that easier team in that round of 16, the easier way to the finals. And so with that 13 goals, now it's putting pressure on Sweden. And yes, it is. Sweden also did put a bit of pressure on the United States. I know it's crazy to think that, but they scored 2 goals against Chile. And now a lot of announcers have been saying, well, that game's going to figure it out. That game's going to really make us see what this U.S. women's national team is capable of on the defensive side of things. We've seen what they're capable of on that offensive side, but now we're going to figure it out on that defensive side. So, yes, if they don't score those 2 goals, it's going to be interesting because I'm pretty positive that Sweden can easily score 12 to 13 goals versus that Thailand team.
Yeah, and I mean, people need to understand. Number one, this is a competition. This isn't a tournament that is one of those participation trophy kind of things. You're there to participate. You're there to pass to the next round. You're there to win. It is not the United States' fault that Thailand isn't as good as a team as every other national team. It's not the fault of the U.S. women's national team. They're going to take advantage of it because, let me remind you, one of the tiebreakers that will make or break you going to the elimination rounds is goal difference. Let's assume that U.S. women's national team paid attention to all of the pundits saying, "Oh, like the mercy rule, blah 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 blah. That's very disrespectful." Ugh, they sicken me. But let's say that they did listen to them. Let's say they scored 5 goals and they're like, okay, that's good enough. We're just gonna be passing the ball around, kind of just toying with Thailand because we don't want to score any more goals. Number one, I think it's more disrespectful for the Thailand girls that the U.S. women's national team are not taking them seriously as a competitor and going all out and limiting themselves. I think that's more disrespectful than going all out, winning 13-0. But at least you have the decency to respect them enough to give it your all from minute 1 to minute 90, because you acknowledge that they are competitors as well. But let's assume that they only scored 5. Do you think that Chile or Sweden are going to have the same compassion on Thailand? Of course not. They're going to take advantage of the opportunities to score as many goals as possible.
Yep.
And what would happen if, because of them showing mercy to Thailand and not scoring the goals that they should have, the goal difference was, pardon my redundancy, the difference between making it to the next round and having an early flight back to the United States.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the easiest groups out of the World Cup just due to that. But also, of course, you've got Sweden. So, and one thing that Sweden has is USA's ex-coach. So, in the past, I don't believe that USA has tried to go out easily or has tried to go easily on an opponent when they score X amount of goals. Unless, of course, it's a friendly. That's a totally different thing. But, yeah. So, Sweden, we all know they're going to go after it. They want that first place as much as possible. This round will go into this group stage. This group right here will go into the final day not knowing who's going to go out first, second, or third, most likely, of course. Actually, I take that back. Third place is kind of already decided, especially if you get that second victory. So, like I said, it's 13 goals. That was very necessary considering we don't know what's going to happen. Sweden's not going to take Thailand lightly. They're going to try to score as many goals as possible as well. And then, of course, for that game, the United States needs to score 3 goals at least, just in case it comes down to goal differential, because if I had to guess, USA and Sweden will probably be trying to, USA, if they do indeed win that second game, will be playing for a draw. Yes, they'll try for a win, but it's more likely that it will end up in a draw just due to the fact of how they've stacked up against each other before. So, yeah, it's going to come down to this goal differential.
I don't agree with you, Callow. And you might try to shrug off the goal differential argument, but facts are facts. Mm-hmm. There's a goal differential tiebreaker. which is very essential, in which you have to score as many goals as possible.
Yep.
Because we know that the rest of the team might make as many, maybe not that many, but make it really, really close, because Sweden, like you mentioned, Jacob, will put up a big fight against the U.S.
Yep.
What if they don't get a result against Sweden?
Exactly.
You know.
That's what I'm saying might happen. I mean, they were the last team to knock out the United States women's national team in a big tournament. And we're talking Olympics or World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So that was back in 2016. Yes, I know it was a while ago, but at the same time, you go back and how the U.S. women's national team done recently against a big-time team. And Sweden, yes, they are an up-and-coming team, or they've already been there. They're one of the top 5 to top 10 teams in the world right now. And so, yes, this is basically going to be for first place, as long as, of course, the United States women's national team wins their second game, whether it being 3 goals or less. As long as they win that game, they're basically locked into the next round. They just need to, of course, be smart and hopefully play an incredible game versus Sweden.
Blues fan says, I love to use this analogy. United lost the league on goal difference.
Yep. That is true.
So, don't say, or was it Liverpool this year? No,
Liverpool lost it on points.
on points. But you're not,
By 1.
yeah. Reward total play over results. That's how goal difference works in theory. And you can't say that the argument is BS when you say
It's right there.
it's right there. You say, well, it only happens if you tie, but there's a possibility that it'll be used. And therefore, it's not BS. It's not something I'm making up, or it's not something any of the other pundits are making up.
No.
This is something that's real. That if the opportunity, or it just so happens that you need goal differential to break a tie, this is where these goals might come in handy.
Yep. Not just these goals, but of course,
Obviously,
like I said, it could all go down to how much we beat Chile by.
and we all would love for it not to happen. We know that the U.S. women's national team has the talent to be the top team in the whole world. But soccer can be very capricious sometimes. I mean, you can have a good historic team, and yet somehow, for some weird reason, at the tournament they don't do as hot as people expected, and you end up having to go through a situation where you never expected for it to happen. Just take a look at Mexico for the 2014 World Cup. How did they qualify to the World Cup? Nobody expected that Mexico would have to use the half a ticket against New Zealand to make it to the World Cup. Nobody thought that was going to happen, and it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Keep telling yourself that, Callow. Nah, I'm kidding, Callow. We love you, man. We love you. But you're still. I still don't agree with your take on this. But man, I think it's time to end this show right now. We went past 17 minutes, but it was a really good discussion to talk about. And Jacob, any last words before we go?
Yeah, just looking forward to the game this Saturday. It should be a fun one. We don't know what to expect really from this RGVFC Toros. We just really need to know that they'll be there kind of and ready to perform their best. And of course, looking forward to that, getting there at the stadium on Saturday and looking forward to a great game.
And if there are any RGV fans listening or watching right now, be sure to join us.
Sean.
Be sure to join us on Saturday at the Stampede Tailgate. We will be there. If you guys want to meet us in person, and if you haven't done so already, you go out there with the Stampede. You go out there, talk with us, talk with the Stampede. Maybe you might be interested in joining them, and we get to know each other more as a fan base and build that family that I think this RGB fan base should be. And I think it'll be a perfect opportunity. So, Jacob, hopefully we can be there at 5 p.m. at the Stampede Tailgate. And then we can go and march in with Stampede.
All right.
So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank our sponsors, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of USL, MLS, and US Soccer. You can get custom scarves for you and your group with roughneckscarves.com. And also, thank you, Golden Goal Press, for your help and your support for all of the Beautiful Game Network. If you guys want T-shirts, stickers, cups, you name it, personalized items that you want to give away or sell or fundraise, be sure to give Golden Goal Press a look at. They have really high quality items for cheaper prices than everywhere else. So be sure to check them out at goldengoalpress.com. And once again, thank you, Jacob, for coming in today. Here's I'm just gonna say it right now so you can be prepared. Next Tuesday, we have a double header, and I'm not talking about Gold Cup. Jacob and I will be hosting next Tuesday, starting at 7, we'll be hosting Generation Orange. And then right after that at 9, we will be hosting Down in the Valley. So it'll be an Orange doubleheader next Tuesday, starting at 7 p.m. So be sure to mark your calendars, put the alarm for that. You don't want to miss that show. Sean sadly won't be able to make it, but we've got it covered. Generation Orange, 7 p.m. next Tuesday. Jacob and I will be hosting. Down in the Valley, 9 p.m. Jacob and I will also be hosting. So be prepared for that, and I hope to see you next Tuesday for that show. But having said that, thank you all. Abrazo completo. Jacob, hopefully we'll see you on Saturday, and let's go Toros. Don't forget that we might gripe a lot, but we still love you. Have a good night. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Oh, Santos says that there's going to be a taquiza on Saturday, so a lot of tacos. Have a good night.